Hi, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. I think I will be joined tonight by Dee Piers. She had something to do earlier, but she said that she was probably going to be home by this time so that she would join me. But as of now, she is not, and so we will go ahead and hope that she can join us, in a little while. But our topics for tonight are Strategic Corruption Reserve. Is Social Security a U.S. Social Security is Social Security a Ponzi scheme? And our final topic is should the Democratic Party form a shadow cabinet, or really should any party out of power form a shadow cabinet? So let us begin with the issue of a strategic corruption reserve, and we'll explain what that is, and we'll be going through a number of articles on that. But I'll start by presenting the first of our articles. This is a piece by Stephanie Kelton, who is one of my favorite authors. I don't know why I'm not able to directly access this. I used to be able to do so. There it is. This is called The Real Reason Trump and Musk Are Planning to Visit Fort Knox. The subtitle is That's Where the Money Is, quote, money is in quotes. Because gold, of course, is not money at this point. It's not a currency. It's just a commodity. This piece was done on February 25th, 2025. Stephanie says, I had a bit of fun with yesterday's post. I don't actually think President Trump and Elon Musk are planning to take hundreds of millions of viewers on a live stream journal into the heavily fortified vault within the United States Bullion Depository at Fort Knox in order, quote, to make sure the gold is still there, unquote. As Trump put it, they know it's there. Someone on Blue Sky asked me if I thought the real reason for the stunt has something to do with the desire to bring back the gold standard. Stephanie says, I don't think that's it. But I do think the president wants this made for TV moment. I think I hear Dee, so I'm going to let her in. And
hello.
Hello, Dee.
Hello, it's good to be here.
It's very good to have you here. But for some reason, oh, I see. This is the new layout. I don't think I want to be in the new layout.
No.
Well, I can go full screen there, but I'm not,
Too many changes going on.
too many changes going on. We just don't know what's happening. So, I was in the middle of Stephanie Kelton's piece. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that. Okay,
Okay.
I'm going to exit the full screen here and try to figure out what the hell's going on here. No, that doesn't help much. I'm sorry, folks. There've been some changes to StreamYard, and I just don't know what's happened with this.
Mm.
But I can go full screen, but evidently I can't get to the standard screen we normally see. So let me go full screen, and then let me go to Stephanie's tab. Full screen is certainly better.
I'll be sharing the show out as well as listening.
Okay, thank you, Dee. Oh, I should announce we've been joined by Dee Piers, the host of Around the World with Dee and Friends. And Dee is my good friend and almost always joins me for posts.
Yes.
So, okay, let me go back to what Stephanie had said. Someone on Blue Sky asked me if I thought the real reason for the stunt has something to do with the desire to bring back the gold standard. I don't think that's it, but I do think there's a reason the president wants this made for TV moment. And it's related to something I wrote about a couple of weeks ago. And Stephanie had a tweet, I'll call it, on Blue Sky, uh, where she did a Substack. But anyway, she had a little graphic of Fort Knox printed on a gold brick and United States Bullion Depository. And her tweet on Blue Sky said, "Where's the loot? How much gold is in Fort Knox?" And there was a reply from Invisible Advocate, Babisky Social, which is the prevailing mode of address on Blue Sky. And the message in that reply was, are they going to try and bring back the gold standard? Look at all this gold just sitting there. Let's get it working for everyday Americans. Stephanie then says, here's what I think is actually going on. President Trump wants the American people in particular to see that big, beautiful stockpile of glistening gold because he wants to revalue it. By showing off, quote, our incredible riches, unquote, the president will explain that we have vastly undervalued its worth. Quote, can you believe it, unquote, Trump will ask. Quote, we're valuing all this gold at $42.22 an ounce. How crazy is that? I can tell you it's worth a lot more, and we're going to value it appropriately. This will help the Trump administration justify an accounting maneuver that essentially uses gold instead of platinum to invent cash, quote unquote, for the Treasury. Now, it must be said at this point that right now, the law does allow the Treasury Department to use 1 ounce platinum coins to invent, quote, cash, unquote, for the Treasury. And the mechanism for doing that is Secretary of the Treasury uh, 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 to determine the face value of a 1 ounce platinum coin, to specify it, have the mint create, okay, the platinum coin, and then deposit the platinum coin in the public enterprise fund account of the Mint at the Federal Reserve in New York. Uh, okay, the Mint, upon accepting, I should say, the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, upon accepting the coin, okay, is going to take the coin and put the face value of the coin uh, in the Treasury general account, okay, at that bank, thus inventing reserves in return for the platinum coin. Now, okay, this kind of a maneuver is legal. It was passed by Congress in 1996. The capability of doing this. Okay, what Trump is looking for here is another kind of accounting maneuver that would use gold instead of platinum for him to invent new reserves, cash, quote unquote, for the Treasury. Stephanie points out here the real reason for the visit. By pledging to, quote, monetize the asset side, unquote, of the federal balance sheet, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has already signaled that something like this is coming. As Gillian Tett recently reported in the Financial Times, one of the assets that might be slated for the monetization scheme is gold. The idea is that the Treasury could revalue America's gold stocks, which are currently valued by law at $42.22 per troy ounce in national accounts. If they were accounted for at the current market values of gold, they would be worth $2,800 per ounce. So Gillian Tett reports that given the holdings at Fort Knox of gold, that could inject $800 billion into the Treasury general account via a repurchase agreement. In terms of, unquote, in terms of the accounting benefits, the maneuver comes pretty damn close to minting a $1 trillion platinum coin, doesn't it? It may sound crazy, but it wouldn't be the first time the Treasury turned to Fort Knox to find money. Here's a bit of history, courtesy of my friend Nathan Tankus. Here's an article from the New York Times on Sunday, November 15th, 1953. It's called U.S. Reduces Debt with Found Gold. Gold bars and vaults at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York being prepared for weighing. The gold was received by the bank for storage under earmark, quote unquote, for the account of a foreign government. The gold bars here shown have a value of $14,000 each. $500 million in bookkeeping item retires securities. As the New York Times reported in 1953, my emphasis, said Stephanie, when the United States went off the gold standard in 1933, the metal was priced at $20.67 a fine ounce, and the nation owned about $4 billion worth at that price. After its reevaluation at $35 an ounce in 1934, however, the same quantity of gold was worth nearly $7 billion, since each ounce was priced $14.33 higher. By devaluing the U.S. dollar, that is, revaluing gold in this way, President Franklin D. Roosevelt found the cash equivalent of $2,819,000,000 in the form of gold. As the Times noted, it was merely a bookkeeping item, quote unquote, but part of the quote free unquote gold was used to meet the nation's subscription to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, unquote. The remaining balance, $1 billion, was carried on the Treasury's books, quote unquote, until Monday, November 9th, 1953, when half of it was monetized, quote unquote, to avert the nation's first debt ceiling crisis. For more on that history, read Kenneth Garbate's staff report from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Here's an excerpt. Quote, the solution to the debt ceiling crisis involved the stock of almost $1 billion of free gold. That is gold coin and bullion in treasury vaults on which gold certificates had not yet been issued. The free gold was what remained of $2 billion that had been allocated by the Gold Reserve Act of January 30th, 1934 to the Exchange Stabilization Fund out of the $2.8 billion derived from the revaluation of 194 million fine ounces of treasury gold from $20.67 per ounce to $35 per ounce in 1934. On Monday, November 9th, the Treasury announced, okay, this is November 9th, 1953 again, the Treasury announced that it had monetized 500 million of its free gold by using gold certificates against the gold and depositing the certificates with the Federal Reserve. That it had used the resulting credits to repurchase directly from the system open market account 500 million of treasury notes that were maturing in December. The action did not affect the monetary policy of the United States. It merely replaced one asset, the treasury notes, with another, the gold certificates on the Fed's books. So you can see that's equivalent. It replaced one asset, okay, with another at a stated value. Once the Treasury bought back 500 million in outstanding debt, the securities were canceled, and hence they were no longer subject to the limit of the debt ceiling. Many legal scholars have long argued that $1 trillion coin could be used to accomplish the same thing today. I, of course, argued that in my book, Fixing a Debt Without Breaking America. It's a Kindle book on sale at Kindle for $9.99, and it covers much more than the possibility of $1 trillion coins, actually proposing at the time a $60 trillion coin. Stephanie Kelton bettered that sometime later by proposing a $100 trillion coin. She likes really round numbers. If I'm right about President Trump's incentives and motivations, I don't think he's planning to use, quote, free gold, unquote, the way past presidents have done. Rather, I suspect that the Fort Knox visit is really about parlaying the gains from a revaluation of the nation's gold stock into some new scheme. A sovereign wealth fund, a strategic Bitcoin reserve, or both, that will have nothing to do with making America great again. So that was Stephanie's hunch.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hunch that has a lot going for it. But let us leave her piece here and move on to the second piece, which you can take,
Okay.
D. and I will put it up for you if you like.
Yes, please.
Okay. And oh, I isn't that interesting? This is
What's that?
yes. It's a new screen which we'll have to figure out how to use.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, no.
Sure, it's very useful. We just don't know how to use it yet. Okay, let me get rid of this since it's the same thing I did before. Uh, let me see if I can get the title here. Here it is. Okay, here it's up for you. Uh,
Okay.
I'll just
Okay,
say the
1 second.
title of this. I took the title of this bar as the name of the topic that we're dealing with now.
Okay. Let me make this larger for me here. Okay. Popular information. Strategic Corruptions Reserve. Um, Jude Legume, Rebecca Crosby, and Noel Sims, March 5th, 2025.
Okay, and oh, look, here's a picture of what might be in the reserve. There's Bitcoin. I think there's Ethereum somewhere. Yeah, there's the Ether coin right there.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some other coins as well. I'm not familiar with the symbols for some of the others. I understand Solana is in there too. Uh, but we'll get to that in a minute or two. Please go ahead, Dee.
Okay. President Trump is hawking meme coin and collecting most of the revenue from the sale of a separate coin from a company called World Liberty Financial. Meanwhile, Trump is plowing ahead with his plan to create a federal, quote, crypto strategic reserve. It
Okay.
started with an executive order. Okay.
Uh, okay. So that is what Judd and his collaborators are saying is the real plan, okay, of Trump. So he's more specific, okay, than Stephanie, but it's the same idea, okay, as a Bitcoin reserve, except it has a number of other coins in it. So please go ahead.
Okay. It started with an executive order, quote, strengthening America's leadership in digital financial technology, issued on Trump's third day in office. The executive order created a crypto working group tasked with evaluating the creation of a, quote, national digital asset stockpile.
Okay, so there's that idea uh, 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 that Stephanie also pointed out in her group. What they want to do is monetize the assets of the United States, but in particular here, the digital assets of the United States.
Okay. The working group shall evaluate the potential creation and maintenance of a national digital asset stockpile and propose criteria for establishing such a stockpile, potentially derived from cryptocurrencies lawfully seized by the federal government through its law enforcement efforts. Trump expanded on this concept in a post on Truth Social on Sunday. He specified with that the quote crypto strategic reserve would not only contain well-known tokens like Bitcoin and Ethereum, but also new entrants like XRP, Solana, and Cardano.
Okay, and what's next to the Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, and so on? For all but XRP, there's a symbol that's used to trade these particular coins. So Bitcoin is BTC and so on, and Cardano, okay, is ADA. So those are the trading symbols for those coins, okay, on the cryptocurrency market.
Donald J. Trump. And obviously, BTC and ETH as other valuable cryptocurrencies will be the heart of the reserve. I also love Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Wonderful. Wonderful, Donald.
A U.S. crypto reserve will elevate this critical industry after years of corrupt attacks by the Biden administration, which is why my executive order on digital assets directed the Presidential Working Group to move forward on a crypto strategic reserve that that includes XRP, SOL, and ADA. I will make sure the U.S. is the crypto capital of the world. We are making America great again.
Okay, so let us note here that uh, he founded a working group to do something with respect to crypto, and he refers to corrupt attacks by the Biden administration. All the Biden administration was trying to do was to begin to regulate the crypto market. But for Trump, that qualifies as a corrupt attack because somehow, I guess, there should be no regulation of the crypto market. We'll come back to the idea of regulation of the crypto market as we go forward. Uh, okay, we'll also come back to the issue of why have inside the crypto strategic reserve uh, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then XRP and SOL, okay, and ADA. Why only those five? Since there are what hundreds at least, as far as I know, there might be thousands of cryptocurrencies that have been invented so far. So why only those five? Well, you can imagine, but we'll come to that issue a little later. Please go on.
The term, quote, crypto strategic reserve is a non sequitur since there are no plausible circumstances in which the United States government holding large amounts of cryptocurrencies would be of any strategic benefit.
Okay, so that's Judd's central statement about this. Uh, he questions whether there are any circumstances where that would be a benefit. Why would he feel that way? Well, because according to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, it's always possible for the United States government to create uh, uh, as much of real currency that it needs to create in order to spend for particular purposes. So, in what way do cryptocurrencies give any more leverage to the United States since we can already create as much currency as we need at will? That's a question you should keep in your mind. Please go on.
A strategic oil reserve is beneficial in the event of a shortage of oil imports or a disruption in the domestic oil production. When would a reserve of cryptocurrency be useful? Under what circumstances would the United States need to make a transaction with a crypto token that could not also be made with the dollar?
So, that is a very good question. That's really the central question.
Exactly.
So, let's go on.
It raises the question of why the United States would divert I hate that, would divert resources to obtain these tokens.
Okay, so here we have to point out that Judd is not an MMTer, and his
Right.
collaborators are not in the MMT community, and they still refer to taxpayer resources that would have to be diverted in order to buy these tokens. We have to add the point that there's no need to divert taxpayer resources to obtain these tokens because the government, under the authority of the Treasury of the Secretary, who can be ordered around by the president, of course, could always create as much money using platinum coins, okay, as the secretary wants, and we would be able to divert the new reserves created at the Federal Reserve once they got the platinum coins in order to obtain these tokens. So we don't have to divert any taxpayer resources. In fact, one of the main central points of MMT is we cannot divert taxpayer resources to obtain these tokens, because to obtain tokens, we have to use money, and taxpayer money is settled upon deposit, okay, in the Treasury General account of the Federal Reserve. And in the process of settlement, the Federal Reserve destroys the taxpayer money. So it can't be used to buy anything or to obtain anything. Only new reserves created by the Federal Reserve in the Treasury General account can be used to buy things. That point is a pretty central MMT point, which this group of authors has no notion of. So please go on.
Okay. While the public benefit is unclear, the biggest economy in the world buying up large amounts of various crypto tokens would be a financial windfall for the companies that created these tokens and the people who already own them. Those companies and investors also have a close political and financial ties to Trump.
Yes.
Isn't that something?
Isn't that something? It would be a financial windfall for the companies. Why would it be a financial windfall for the companies? Well, let's say the government created $1 trillion using platinum coins, got that $1 trillion into the Treasury General account, and then it were to use that money to buy cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
Then the value of the cryptocurrencies that it bought, and only the ones it bought, would shoot through the sky, because $1 trillion had been invested in cryptocurrencies. It would drive the value of them up. Then the people holding those currencies could sell them off at the height, because they probably have advanced news of this, and make huge profits. Those companies and investors also have close political and financial ties to Trump. And incidentally, Trump himself could make huge profits also, because he would know when that purchase was going to take place. And he could be there ready to invest some funds in those crypto tokens. And he would hugely benefit from that, wouldn't he? Direct corruption. The next section is called Ripple Makes Waves. Please go ahead, Dee.
For XRP, being included in Trump's proposed national crypto reserve is a major coup for its creator, Ripple.
Ripple. It sounds like a cheap wine.
Yeah.
I think it is a cheap wine.
Introduced in 2012, XRP is the world's third largest cryptocurrency and was designed to speed up international transactions by using XRP as a bridge currency for transactions made through Ripple's payment network. Most of the large financial institutions that use Ripple's platform, however, do not use XRP, so the currency has little value other than as a speculative asset. The currency remains highly centralized, with Ripple owning 48 billion XRP of the 100 billion coins in circulation.
Okay, so let's say the government investment drives up the value of one Ripple coin to $5 a coin. That's a huge windfall, okay, for Ripple,
Mm-hmm.
just a huge windfall for Ripple and for any other large holder, okay, of the Ripple coins, XRP coins. Okay. I mean, if you're Ripple and the value of one coin is driven up to $5,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're nearly as rich as Elon Musk overnight.
Yeah.
Magic, right? Just
Yep.
magic.
Okay. In December 2020, the end of Trump's first term, the SEC issued charges against Ripple related to XRP, alleging that the token was an unregistered security. Initially, a court ruled that XRP is a security in certain transactions, but not in others. But the SEC appealed that decision. Although the SEC has abandoned many of its other legal actions against crypto firms, the appeal in the XRP case is still pending.
It may still be pending, but the SEC is in the process of being crippled by the Trump administration.
Mm.
I wonder why. Please go on.
Ripple's improving political fortune is not by an accident. The company contributed $5 million worth of XRP to Trump's inauguration fund, one of the largest corporate contributions. Ripple also donated $45 million to Fair Shake, a super PAC that supported pro-crypto congressional candidates and played a critical role in securing Republican majorities in the House and Senate. The company has since contributed another $25 million to Fair Shake ahead of the 2026 midterm elections.
So you see why we're talking about a strategic corruption reserve,
Mm-hmm.
because this is corrupt through and through. I mean, these people are just creating out of whole cloth but huge amounts of money, which will wind up in just a few hands. Donald Trump undoubtedly being one of the few hands, but the big owners of Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana, okay, and Cardano, I guess it is, okay, would also be hugely wealthy because they'd be going through this kind of process also. Okay, please go on.
Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse attended Trump's inauguration, and earlier in January, he and Ripple's chief legal officer had dinner with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. The New York Post reported that Garlinghouse is on the shortlist candidates for Trump's Crypto Advisory Council.
Okay, I'll bet I know what they talked about when they had dinner with Trump, okay, at
Hmm.
Mar-a-Lago. What they probably talked about is this very scheme, which was outlined to Trump, and he was probably informed of how he and his family could make huge dollars out of this scheme if only he could found a strategic corruption reserve that made up of cryptocurrency. Okay, by the way, we have to notice it's not that the cryptocurrency would be worth so much in itself. It's that the cryptocurrencies would be bought and propelled to these huge values by US dollars. That, of course, it's possible for the government to create. Please go on.
Garlinghouse praised Trump's inclusion of smaller and more volatile cryptocurrencies like XRP and the National Crypto Reserve on X. Here's Brad Garlinghouse. I've said this before. The crypto industry will achieve our goals and beyond if we work together. Appreciate the crypto president at real Donald Trump's vision of a government digital asset reserve representative of the industry.
Okay, so this is not about something that's representative of the industry. It would be representative of 5 coins, and it would be goosing up the value of those 5 coins in order to create huge gains for the whales who own these 5 coins. What this is about is making them rich. It's not about anything else. It's not about the public purpose. It's not about doing things for people. It's about using the power of government to leverage highly artificial values for these crypto coins to make their owners fabulously wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. And I won't say they're beyond their wildest dreams because they dreamed up this deal of bribing politicians to get them interested in this strategic corruption reserve that has no function. It has no function. It relies on dollars to get its value, and there's nothing that can be done with these cryptocurrencies that cannot be done with US dollars.
Exactly.
That's the incredible part of all of this. Now let's get down to brass tacks.
Okay, do you want to look at the, see if there's any comments?
Yeah, let's see if there's any comments. I haven't looked at any comments yet. Now we're doing pretty well. We've got 42 folks here. I'm going to cancel this. See, oh, there we are. Hey, we got our usual layout. It went back to our usual layout. Can you see
Oh,
that?
that's cool. Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
that's
that's
cool.
great. Now I know how to get back to the usual layout. Okay. Steve Wilbrand says, hello, everybody. Earl of Laurel says, hi, Steve. Please, everybody, share, like, and subscribe on this. I don't have too many likes, but I'm sure you like this because it's really interesting. Joanne O'Halanos Ricadio says, is there any gold in Fort Knox? Of course there's gold in Fort Knox. It doesn't have any function except to sit there, but there's gold in Fort Knox. And that's not a digital asset of the United States. That's a metal asset, which currently is valued by the government at $42.22 an ounce, when its actual market value is $2,800 an ounce. Some people are predicting that gold will soon be at $4,000 an ounce. Sandy says, hello, shared. Hi, Sandy. Steve says, hi, Sandy. Sandy says, yes, there is gold in Fort Knox. Earl of Laurel says, this kind of makes my brain hurt. Sandy says, there's 147.3 million ounces of gold. Sandy says, hi, Steve. Sandy says, hi, Joanne, Joe, and Bonnie. Sandy says, hi, Dee. Sandy says, they don't have the Trump coin, laugh out loud. No, the Trump coin won't be in the strategic corruption reserve because after Trump has made a killing on that coin, its value has evidently declined to such as crashed. It's crashed. So he didn't really make that much on the coin himself. The company that he was working with, I think, made $100 million in fees in the end. I really don't know how much the meme coin is worth at this point. Sandy says he was talking about it, I think, last week, talking Sandy says, Donald is such a dork. Makes sense to me to buy Bitcoin. We have a sovereign currency we can spend. There's no point for the government to buy Bitcoin. There's no reason to buy Bitcoin for the government. There may be reason for individuals to buy Bitcoin as a speculative asset. And there are people who do buy it as a speculative asset. Sandy says Bitcoin can just disappear. Sounds like a giant scam. It may be a giant scam, and it may disappear at some point. But right now, there are people who are billionaires due to Bitcoin. They bought in. I forget if the price of Bitcoin has reached $100,000 of Bitcoin yet. I don't know. I don't check it every day. It was threatening to get to $100,000 of Bitcoin. But I know of people who bought in at $3 of Bitcoin and who maybe invested like $30,000 at $3 a Bitcoin. They're billionaires now. And that was the function of Bitcoin, that it was a speculative asset. Steve says, isn't that a pump and dump scheme? Yeah, they've been pumping and dumping and pumping and dumping and pumping and dumping for years and years and years. Since about 2009 or 2010, they've been pumping and dumping the Bitcoin. Sandy says, could see Trump falling for this scam, anything to make a buck. Yeah. Okay. Evelina is, I think that's waving, but maybe she's clapping. Maybe that's the sound of one half clapping. I don't know. The Earl of Lurl says, whoa, yes. So let us get on to our next piece here, because I think that piece is getting to the reality that we're approaching with this absolute crap. Some Democrats endorse a bill allowing Elon Musk to create his own currency, the Genius Act is the first pro-crypto bill Republicans want to rush through this Congress. Thanks to industry money, several Democrats are ignoring the major problems in this bill. This is by Dave Dayen, March 10th, 2025. And here's a picture of Elon, complete with scraggly beard. Elon Musk, who is a trader and booster of crypto, would likely favor a means for users to trade crypto on his X Money platform. The crypto industry spent lavishly to buy a friendly Congress in the 2024 elections, with their donations making almost half of all corporate donations to PACs last year. 50% of all donations from corporations to PACs. They hope this week will begin the return on that investment with assistance from Senate Democrats. The Senate Banking Committee is expected this week to mark up the guiding and establishing national innovation for U.S. stable coins. The genius thing comes from guiding and establishing national innovation for U.S. That's genius. So that's why it's called the Genius Act. A Republican-led bill, co-sponsored by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a Democrat of New York, the new chair of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. So she's expecting huge donations from the crypto coin industry while she's serving as the new chair of the DSCC. Gillibrand has worked for years to push industry-friendly crypto legislation through Congress, and she may have hit on a winning formula with a critical mass of Democrats having received millions from crypto PACs and ready to collaborate with Republicans and the White House, the Trump White House. But consumer protection advocates, other senators, and even crypto-leaning types of regulators have warned that the Genius Act would create a Wild West in stable coins, provide weak standards, deprive users of financial security. Why would it deprive them of financial security? Because it's an unregulated area of investments. Small dollar people will come in, and then they will be subject to the manipulation of the whales and give big tech firms like Elon Musk's X the ability to create a lightly monitored private currency. Now, I still don't think it would be a currency exactly, because you couldn't go into the store and buy things with that particular cryptocurrency. You couldn't pay your taxes with that cryptocurrency. Though who knows, someday they may pass a bill to allow the payment of taxes, which would be the most critical mistake of all if they did that. But anyway, to go on with the article, negotiations are ongoing on the bill, and a new version is supposed to be released today. Defenders argue that it's critical to enhance safety in crypto markets. Quote, that's reasonable, but if you do it wrong, you can create the crisis you sought to avoid, unquote, said Mark Hayes, Associate Director for Cryptocurrency and Financial Technology at Americans for Financial Reform. Quote, by bringing stable coins closer to mainstream finance, if one of them crashes, you can create contagion, quote unquote. But I think that's not really the worst thing that could happen here. The worst thing that could happen is that the people heavily invested in these 5 cryptocurrencies could experience such a huge increase of their wealth that would exacerbate still further the oligarchy problem that we already have. I mean, if you think the oligarchy problem is bad now, try to visualize a situation where the United States government invests $1 trillion into the cryptocurrency market. This is going to benefit the whales in cryptocurrencies, the Elon Musks, the Max Kaisers. I'm sure the Donald Trumps and the Michael Saylors, just to name 4 people who are big names in cryptocurrency. I don't think Trump is really a big name yet, but of course he would be if he causes this to go through. But I do have to raise, a number of points about this. One point I should probably raise now before we go further. Let's say Trump let's say that he's looking for money, and in the end, he finds that he can't use taxpayer dollars. Why can't he use taxpayer dollars? Because what the executive can use taxpayer dollars for is to spend appropriations, and even if Congress were to create this particular cryptocurrency thing, that doesn't mean that it's going to allow the government, the federal government, to spend any of its cryptocurrency reserve. In other words, the government, in spending for things, is still going to use dollars to buy those things. It's still going to use dollars to buy the cryptocurrency, for example. So, if it's going to use dollars to buy the cryptocurrency, then those dollars for buying cryptocurrency have to be appropriated by the Congress. Otherwise, Congress could not spend whatever money it has uh, um, um, to buy the cryptocurrencies. So let's say people oppose the use of taxpayer money, quote unquote. One thing Trump could then do is to create a $1 trillion coin. He has the legal authority to do that. But if he used that particular legal authority, he still wouldn't have the legal authority to spend that $1 trillion on the cryptocurrency. Not unless Congress appropriated that. So the appropriation to buy the cryptocurrency is what is needed to make all this go. So that's the point I wanted to make. Going on with the article. This debate is happening while Democrats struggle to devise a strategy to resist the Trump administration. On issues like tax cuts for the wealthy or cuts to Medicaid, Democrats are relatively united. But quietly, many appear eager to give the crypto industry and big tech the items on their wish list. The Genius Act sits at the top of it. Stablecoins are crypto assets intended to function like the money in a bank deposit or a money market fund, with their value pegged to the US dollar or some other standard. This makes stablecoins useful, industry actors say, as a way to trade, settle, or pay for goods and services. Mostly they're used to buy and trade other crypto assets. There's a question about whether they could be used to pay, to trade, settle, or pay for goods, and services. So keep that in mind, that's a very important point. But let's say they could be used as a way to trade, settle, or pay for goods and services. Let's say that the stable coin market decided to peg stablecoin values instead of pegging it to the US dollar. What if they decided to peg those assets, say, to the renminbi or the ruble? What's to stop them from doing that? Has Congress thought this through? What happens if they decide to peg the value of the stable coins to a new BRICS currency that we don't even see at this point, but that may be coming down the pike in 2 or 3 or 4 years? Have they thought through the consequences of that? I don't think so. Have the Democrats who are going to vote for this thought through the consequences of that for the US dollar? Have they thought through the consequences of that for our monetary sovereignty? Our monetary sovereignty is what allows us to do deficit spending and to recover from business cycles. Are we really interested in compromising that? by creating a stable coin reserve that may eventually turn into something that people can use to buy other assets instead of the dollar being used to buy other assets? It's just a question I'm raising. I think it's an important question that has to be thought through. Stablecoin issuers claim they're backed by enough assets to ensure a constant value. But a study of over 60 active stable coins, oh, by the way, these stable coins wouldn't be part of the reserve that Trump is trying to set up. There would be only 5 cryptocurrencies in that, and those are the ones we already named. But a study of over 60 active stablecoins from the Bank for International Settlement found that all had lost their peg at one point or another. And unlike bank deposits, the government has no insurance for customers who may get wiped out if a stablecoin collapses. So what's going to happen to people who invest in such stable coins? They can be wiped out. They have no backing from government insurance. In some ways, that's what the legislation is designed to combat. Written by Senate Banking Committee member Bill Hagerty, Republican of Tennessee, and co-sponsored by committee chair Tim Scott, Republican of South Carolina. 2 geniuses, those people. And a third genius, Senator Cynthia Lummis, who's a Republican of Wyoming. In my mind, a certified wacko. The Genius Act creates a framework whereby stablecoin issuers under 10 billion would be regulated by states, and issuers over 10 billion regulated by the Federal Reserve or the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, with them continuing to buy candidates from both parties. Good luck with that kind of regulation. Going on with the article. New rules would include licensing procedures, compliance with anti-money laundering and sanctions laws, what is termed as 100% reserve requirements for the backing assets and processes if the stablecoin issuer goes into bankruptcy. But the explanation explicitly states that the regulation will be, quote, light touch, unquote, and that supervision, examination, and enforcement would have, quote, clear, would have clear kinds of limitations. The bill, one of 2 big priorities for the industry. The other is a, quote, market structure bill to get enforcement away from the Securities and Exchange Commission. Don't you feel terribly comfortable they want to get enforcement away from the Securities and Exchange Commission? Why do you suppose they want to do that? Resembles prior stablecoin laws pushed by Republicans, including Representative Patrick McHenry, Republican, North Carolina, former chair of the House Financial Services Committee, who now is working in the crypto division of venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz. The White House has been very interested in getting crypto legislation passed while they ramp down oversight from financial regulators. This is a scheme to hijack the United States completely. I mean, the kind of impact this would have, I know we're already at oligarchy, but the kind of impact this would have in stabilizing and strengthening the oligarchy, we would never get out of this. House Financial Services ranking member Maxine Waters has a competing bill that would put all issuers under Federal Reserve oversight. Again, Federal Reserve oversight, preventing big tech platforms from creating a stablecoin of their own, and seek to stop offshore firms from evading regulations. Some of those aspects might be included in the new version, though it is expected any changes would be minor. Oops, sorry, scrolled that down too fast. Senator Gillibrand's participation has always given a bipartisan patina to crypto bills tilted to industry. There are 1 current and 8 former staff members in Gillibrand's office with experience in crypto, financial services, and high-tech industries, including a VP and general counsel at Coinbase, executives at Barclays Bank, Meta, and Google, and lobbyists for crypto firms Grayscale and DYDX, financial firms of JP Morgan Chase and MasterCard, an online trading platform, Robinhood. But in this case, I don't think Robinhood is interested in robbing from the rich to give to the poor. Sorry about that joke. Since 2020, Gillibrand has received $259,750 in campaign donations from cryptocurrencies and another $2.2 million from financial companies, according to campaign finance disclosures. Disgraced FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried, who, by the way, is currently trying mightily to get a pardon from guess who? Disgraced FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried, Andreessen Horowitz co-founder Ben Horowitz, and the Winklevoss twins, who run crypto firm Gemini, are past donors to Gillibrand. Wonderful, the Winklevoss twins. Quote, Senator Gillibrand makes decisions about policy based solely on how it will affect the lives and financial security of everyday New Yorkers, said spokesperson Evan Lukowski in response to questions from the prospect. Like, how is this going to improve the lives and financial security of everyday New Yorkers? It's going to improve the financial security of Michael Saylor, said spokesperson Evan Lukowski. Well, just getting back to the article. But if it's expected for statewide politicians in New York to defend finance in Wall Street, Gillibrand appears to be extending that tradition to crypto. So Gillibrand is bucking for the title of Senator from Crypto, just as Chuck Schumer is known as the Senator from Wall Street. Wyoming Republican Loomis has been Gillibrand's main partner on pro-crypto initiatives. She even has a joint fundraising committee with Loomis. I never know whether her name is pronounced as Loomis or Lummis, called the Financial Innovation Victory Committee, that has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars and was established days before the two released the Pro-Crypto Responsible Financial Innovation Act in 2022. The Gillibrand-Loomis Payment Stablecoin Act, introduced but not passed in 2024, is a close cousin to the Genius Act. So they've been perfecting this act over time. Gillibrand even published an op-ed promoting the Genius Act at CoinDesk, the website covering the crypto industry. The sentiments in it are similar to the statement she gave the prospect. Quote, there are many reasons that Democrats and progressives should and do support stablecoin legislation, unquote, Gillibrand said. Among other points, she touted the potential to reduce the cost of remittances, expand financial inclusion, and fuel innovation. Quote, the simple fact is that blockchain digital assets and cryptocurrencies are moving ahead. The European Union and other actors have already passed substantial regulation to encourage and enable technological innovation. The US is trailing, and we cannot risk falling further behind. I think the question is here, or the point is here, technological innovation itself is not necessarily a good thing. It is not neutral. It depends on what it's used for. Financial innovation in this area, the financial innovation envisioned in this bill, is not good for people. It's good for the oligarchs. I don't think the US needs to catch up, okay, in this area. Conceptually, catching up is very simplistic anyway. What's this about? It's about basically using federal money to goose the value of certain cryptocurrency coins. Why is that going to be useful? Why and how is that going to be useful to people? As Dave Dayen says, some progressives disagree. Here's a picture, okay, of Gillibrand. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat, New York, seen last month at a committee hearing on Capitol Hill. Though bill supporters stress what they call stringent reserve requirements for stablecoin issuers, the Genius Act version released earlier this year would permit uninsured U.S. bank deposits or offshore deposits as backing assets. Capital and liquidity standards, as the authors admit, would be limited. Unlike the Waters bill, issuers could have a criminal history. In other words, this bill is being written for Sam Bankman-Fried. And issuers could gain access to the Federal Reserve payment system, a long-sought wish for non-banks that would let crypto firms use the money transferring tools to the central bank and bring them inside the financial system. And somehow these people accept that's not going to destabilize the financial system. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau would not have explicit oversight of stablecoin issuers and wallets under the bill. And federally licensed stablecoins could preempt any state consumer protection laws. Ay, ay, ay. Stablecoins below 10 billion could seek a state license without federal oversight, potentially creating a race to the bottom. Quote, everyone believes the state license will be like the New York system, which is not amazing, but better than some, said Hayes, unquote. And quote again, but it'll be more like the Wyoming regime. Where is Cynthia Loomis from? Wyoming. Where anyone can issue a stablecoin, unquote. Lukaksi, Gillibrand's spokesperson, said this mischaracterized the structure and that the regulatory frameworks would have to be substantially similar, quote unquote, to the federal standard and certified by the Treasury Secretary. Is that in the bill? Is that in the bill? While the Genius Act says that depositors will have, quote, priority in bankruptcy, and Lukaski clarified that depositors would be, quote, first in line in the event of any insolvency, unquote, that's not a guarantee, as deposit insurance would be, that customers would get back their money in a timely fashion if an issuer becomes insolvent. Quote, I fear this legislation is going to make unsophisticated investors wrongly believe that credit risk on stablecoins is not an issue, wrote Professor Levitin, who's a professor of law at Georgetown, at the blog Credit Slips. Quote, if that happens, the Genius Act is setting the stage for a federal bailout of disappointed cryptocurrency investors. When a stablecoin issue goes belly up and investors discover they don't have the protections they thought they had, unquote. An implicit bailout is a subsidy for crypto firms, says Dave Dayan. One particular concern involves Tether, an offshore company founded by a former child actor from the Mighty Ducks. I don't know why that's relevant, but there it is. Tether is also the largest stablecoin by volume. Quote, practically speaking, it's the central bank of crypto, unquote. Well, the central bank of crypto is not like the central bank of the United States. Hayes explained, but rumors of a lack of legitimate reserves and dodgy management have dogged it. On paper, the Genius Act bars Tether and other non-U.S. issuers from issuing stablecoins directly, but they could be issued offshore and then traded onto platforms that serve by U.S. customers, a fairly common practice. It's an easy way to evade the restrictions in the bill. Incidentally, the bank that holds Tether's assets is Cantor Fitzgerald, which until a couple of months ago was run by, guess who? Howard Lutnick, the current Secretary of Commerce, one of Trump's favorites. The Tether loophole is one of the elements that will be updated in a new draft released on Monday, Lukoski said. But the biggest concern about the Genius Act is that it allows non-financial companies, particularly big tech platforms, to issue stablecoins of their own. In 2019, Facebook attempted to create its own currency, the name of which was Libra. It failed amid bipartisan outcry, but the Genius Act gives big tech all the tools it would need to restart that initiative. This is a particular concern with Elon Musk's X Money project. Musk, who is a trader and booster of crypto, I did say trader, Trader. I don't want you to mistake what I said. And booster of crypto would likely favor a means for users to trade crypto on his platform. And he's very comfortable with stablecoins. Musk's companies, SpaceX and Starlink, use stablecoins throughout the world. And he was a key early investor in Stripe, which recently acquired Starlink's stablecoin processing platform known as Bridge. The Genius Act, quote, will clear the decks for Elon to issue X money as his own stablecoin without any guardrails to protect consumers, to protect national security, or protect the financial stability of our economy, said Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts, a primary opponent to the bill on the Senate floor last week. Quote, Republicans are setting the stage for the richest man in the world to issue his own currency that competes with the U.S. dollar, unquote. Lukoski responded that the idea that anyone could create a private currency is false, unquote. But did he say why? From Timothy Massad, former Democratic chair of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, an agency seen as having some sympathy toward crypto, told a Senate hearing in late February that while a regulatory framework for digital assets is desperately needed, the limitations on capital and also liquidity requirements, the weak bankruptcy framework, and the loophole for offshore firms like Tether in the Genius Act were all cause for concern. Quote, yes, we need clarity of rules, unquote, he said, but we need the right rules, he said. Before the election, Trump issued a meme coin that was a transparent effort to trade off MAGA hero worship. And there is a picture of the Trump meme coin, which, by the way, was issued on Solana's platform. Trump was financially tied in with Solana. As the top Democrat on the Senate Banking Committee, Warren is the party's leading authority on financial matters. But money talks on Capitol Hill, and lately industry money has been quite loud. Even though any stablecoin bill will need 60 votes to overcome a Senate filibuster, Republicans are confident that they will get at least that with cooperation from their Democratic counterparts. That's why they set the markup up for this week. Senator Ruben Gallego, Democrat of Arizona, who was made ranking Democrat on a new digital asset subcommittee of the Senate Banking Committee, received millions from the main crypto PAC in his swing state victory in 2024. So did Senator Alyssa Slotkin, a Democrat of Michigan, who gave the Democratic rebuttal to President Trump's speech to a joint session of Congress, and Senator Adam Schiff, who saw millions in crypto funds take out his chief rival for the open seat, former Representative Katie Porter, Democrat of California. One of the most effective representatives when it came to regulation of big business and industry in the House. Senator John Fetterman, Democrat of Pennsylvania, also received crypto donations in his 2022 run for the Senate. Senator Gallego has called the Genius Act, quote, very favorable, unquote. And Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, has expressed interest as well. First term Banking Committee Banking Committee member, Senator Angela also Brooks, has endorsed the Genius Act already, and Senators Lisa Blunt, Rochester, Democrat of Delaware, and Andy Kim, a Democrat of New Jersey, who gives the impression of being total clean gene, could also support the bill. It remains possible that committee Democrats will seek amendments to enhance consumer protection and anti-money laundering features in the bill. The Senators Gallego and Warner did not return a request for comment. Senator Gillibrand is obviously on board, though she doesn't sit on the Banking Committee. As the head of the DSCC, a pro-crypto posture among her fellow Democrats could benefit her fundraising efforts. That's the understatement of the year. She said to Politico recently, several Democratic senators, quote, want to get involved in this space. Last week, the Senate approved a resolution that could strike down an IRS rule requiring reporting by brokers who conduct digital asset sales. 70 senators voted for the resolution, including 18 Democratic caucus members, among them also Brooks, Fetterman, Gallego, Gillibrand, Kim, Schiff, Warner, and even the minority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York. If there are supporters on the Democratic side in the Senate, there are probably more in the House. Representative Richie Torres, Democrat of New York, just launched a bipartisan congressional crypto caucus, and a pro-industry bill got dozens of Democratic votes last year. That the Genius Bill is a priority for the White House and Senate Republican leadership to be rushed through Congress in the first 100 days has not deterred Democrats from banking it. But in the context of President Trump's illegal dismantling of agencies and commandeering of Congress's power of the purse, the maneuvers on crypto in particular make it confounding why Democrats would throw their support his way. Before the election, Trump issued a meme coin that was a transparent effort to trade off hero worship in MAGA and get millions in tribute from people with business before the government. Predictably, Dollar Trump ended up crashing, earning insiders almost $100 million in trading fees and more in early cash outs, but leading to major losses for nearly 1 million users. Even industry executives were jittery about the Donald Trump gimmick, making a mockery of what they've struggled to present as a legitimate business. The Securities and Exchange Commission recently declared that meme coins are not security, and therefore will not be subject to SEC oversight. Then earlier this month, Trump announced a strategic crypto reserve that seems to have no other function but enriching insiders and ripping off ordinary people. The pump part of the pump and dump began minutes after Trump's announcement, without the reserve even buying crypto yet. Well, as I pointed out, he can't buy crypto without an appropriation from Congress to buy the crypto. The top 5 proposed holdings in the strategic reserve happen to be the top 5 holdings at the startup Bitwise, whose primary investor is David Sachs, who is also Trump's crypto czar. The riches will flow even more once the government buys digital assets and props up their price, only to wait for the inevitable sellout and crash. Yep. But of course, there'll be a sellout by the whales and by the oligarchs, followed by the crash. But the whales will have taken their profits, and the oligarchy will be strengthened. These are unrelated to stable coins, though stable coins facilitate crypto trading. So why on earth would Democrats ignore this particular manipulation of the market, which reveals the inherent pattern of insider self-enrichment in crypto, to pass legislation making such future events more likely? Why would they support something deeply sought by Trump insiders and the co-president at the very time when they're upending our system of government? Quote, in my view, a vote for such a provision furthering Monk's neo-fascist political and economic ambitions is a vote against ensuring the U.S. democracy survives, unquote, said Jeff Chester of the Center for Digital Democracy. While stablecoin by regulation has always had some bipartisan appeal, there's no big secret as to why Democrats are ignoring the machinations of Donald Trump and jumping in on pro-crypto efforts. Whether they're afraid of industry money taking them out, as happened to Senators Sherrod Brown and John Tester last year, or do they see an opportunity to take in some of that cash hoard for themselves? They're blocking out the Trumpian noise and foregoing a very legitimate line of attack. The dollar Trump coin and the strategic crypto reserve are representative of the manipulative aspects of crypto as a whole, unquote. Hayes said, Democrats supporting the Genius Act, quote, should be just as concerned about passing a bill that would give a green light to the same people who are avid participants in the dismantling of sound financial regulation and would material benefit from passage of this bill, including Elon, unquote. In response, Lukaska said, quote, providing clear regulations for stable coins is the best way to protect consumers. Why do we need stable coins at all? What is their positive function? Why? Hayes would prefer regulation making clear that any entity acting like a bank or money market fund should be regulated like one. But even middle ground approaches, like Mossad's, have been ignored in favor of the most industry-linked types of legislation. As Hayes puts it, quote, there are ways to solve payment problems without relying on an industry known for predation, unquote. And that's the end of that great article by Dave Dayen. The first 2 articles raised the general possibilities involved in crypto activities inside of the government. But this last article talks about legislative threats that exist now and that are on the near horizon. Bills that we have to block, activities that we have to block or do our best to block because they are oligarchy supporting initiatives. absolutely oligarchy supporting initiatives. They are not for us. People are investing time and effort, including Democrats, in order to make oligarchs even richer and to create newer oligarchs who would become fabulously wealthy, for example, by the strategic corruption reserve or by the stablecoin types, okay, of legislation. These bills are not for us. D, any
And
comments?
well, the word really has to get out
It
and talked
really,
about over and over and over again.
yes, because nobody knows about it. It's happening, it's been happening under the radar,
Yes.
completely under the radar. It's another threat to our democracy from the oligarchy. Okay, let's check out any comments we received on that. Sherry says, of course, Warner, that slime ball is in favor. Yeah, of course. Let's go back to the beginning. Uh, Steve Wolfbrand says there was a guy who made millions in Bitcoin but couldn't remember his password. I know, I heard that story.
I remember that. Yeah.
Sandy Degg says hi to Evelina, and Sandy Degg says yuck. Uh, Elon, and shows us the vomit icon. And the Earl of Laurel says, that's Steve Wolfbrandt. I remember him. That's got to be tough. Yeah, I bet he went to a psychiatrist and got self hypnosis to try to remember the password. Sandy Deck says, crypto is really risky. There is no safeguard on it. The whales will walk away with the profits. They're walking away with the profits now. That's what they do in crypto. If crypto doesn't pay your rent or buy your groceries or pay for health care, what the hell is it good for the ordinary American? Sandy says, I don't even know who takes it. Well, there are people who take it because they're speculating in Bitcoin right now. There are people working on the web and live streaming who are accepting contributions in Bitcoin. Say, if you have Bitcoin, let me have Bitcoin. I'd like that, because everybody would like to speculate it. They know as a speculative investment right now, okay, it's unequaled. And of course, everybody completely underestimates the risks to themselves inherent in the possibility of a Bitcoin crash. And he says it sounds like a way to scam people. I think it does scam the small investors. Sandy says, do we know what the assets are? Only just a little about that. Sandy says, laugh out loud, wacko. Evelina says, I thought Trump wanted a strong dollar. Will he end up joining BRICS and undermining the U.S. currency? I don't know. It's very possible. But if he joined BRICS, I don't think that would necessarily undermine, the U.S. currency. It might ensure that U.S. currency becomes part of the market basket that will undoubtedly define a BRICS currency in the end. Sandy says, God only knows with him. I know he's totally unpredictable in all sorts of areas. With the old can't beat him, join him would not put it past this administration, whose only policy is chaos. Sandy gives the thumbs up. Evelina says, Gillibrand from upstate New York. That Gillibrand, Kirsten Gillibrand, exactly. Sandy says, have these people lost their minds? Sandy says, it's a pyramid scheme. The people at the top make money. Evelina says, they're in their right minds, completely right wing, Sandy says, and the people at the bottom are stuck with worthless coins. Sherry says, hi, everyone. Steve says, "Hi, Sherry." Sandy says, "Who came up with this idea of crypto?" Uh, who came up with it is a guy by the name of Satoshi Watanabe, the mysterious Satoshi Watanabe. Elon is losing money because people want his ugly cars? Or is it, oh, don't want his ugly cars? Good. Of course, Warner, that slime ball, is in favor. Selling the people out, and it is really just a zero sum game. Well, they're trying to set up a zero sum game. I mean, right now, money is not a zero sum game because the Constitution says the government can create it. But they're constantly trying to create a situation that's a zero sum game because they already have money. So if they can make it a zero sum game, they benefit. Sandy says, I had a kid on the internet try to talk me into getting crypto. I said, no thanks. Okay, Sandy. Cool. So let's get to the next topic. I think we've covered this topic pretty thoroughly. So let's get to the next topic, which is Social Security a Ponzi scheme?
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Put up the first article on that, D. It's yours.
Okay.
It's uh, it's another piece by Stephanie. A really good piece. Let me get it up top. There we go. Okay.
Okay. Elon Musk is the reason Social Security is, quote, running out of money. Stephanie Kelton, March 2nd, 2025, The Lens. Before we dive in it, let's get out one thing straight. Social Security is a federal program that was created under the Social Security Act of 1935. It was established as part of the New Deal by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt with a, quote, dedicated revenue in the form of a payroll tax.
Okay.
Today,
The dedicated revenue is in quotes there.
yes.
And there's a real good reason why it's in quotes. Okay, please go ahead.
Today, employees and their employers each pay 6.2% of wages up until a taxable maximum of 176,100, and that's in 2025, into Social Security. I've been publishing academic and popular articles on Social Security for at least 25 years, trying unsuccessfully to shift the public debate away from concerns over, quote, financial solvency toward a focus on inflation risk and real resources. As far as I'm concerned, any lawmaker, journalist, or media pundit who talks about Social Security without distinguishing between the following challenges isn't being honest with American people. 1. Legal authority to pay. Under current law, Social Security can only pay full scheduled benefits if there is enough earmarked funding to do so. Put simply, there must be enough, quote, cash coming in via payroll tax withholding or enough, quote, cash coming in plus, quote, cash in Social Security Trust Fund to cover the full cost of paying benefits each year. If the trust funds run dry, i.e. are drawn down to zero, then the program doesn't have the legal authority from Congress to pay full benefits. This would force automated cuts on current law.
Okay, before we go through, I want to comment on this. Okay, first of all, cash does come in via payroll tax withholdings. But when the government settles the cash deposits, the Federal Reserve destroys the cash, and especially in relation to Social Security, because even when the Federal Reserve creates new reserves in an equivalent amount, those reserves go to the Treasury General accounts. They do not go into the Social Security Trust Fund. Now, the Social Security Trust Fund is an accounting record, is credited with the value of the reserves that are created by the Federal Reserve. But there's no cash in the Social Security Trust Fund. That's why Stephanie has cash in quotes. And that's why she has cash in quotes in the two other places also. Because there's no real cash there. Okay, but there is an accounting record. Okay, an accounting record which equal to the payroll tax money that was at first deposited by the Treasury Department into its account. Okay. Okay, now, if the when the Social Security Trust Fund runs dry, what is happening is that the accounting record is drawn down to zero. Okay, so you might ask, what happens if Congress goes ahead and appropriates Social Security payments, but the trust funds have been so-called drawn down to zero? The trust funds have run dry. The value of the trust fund, okay, is zero. What happens then? What happens then is that because of the way the law is written, the program doesn't have the legal authority from Congress to pay full benefits. Now, Congress could change that. If Congress sees that the Social Security Trust Fund, okay, has run dry, but it wants to pay out full benefits anyway, it could appropriate the full benefits, and in the appropriation, it could explicitly say, this law appropriating funds to pay full benefits repeals the specification in the Social Security Act that prohibits the payment of benefits if the trust fund is drawn down to zero. But Congress would have to say that explicitly. It would have to say that it was repealing that provision of the Social Security Act. That might well prove a political problem, because all kinds of stupid things prove a political problem. So Stephanie is right to point out that right now the law says that if the trust fund is drawn down to zero, then the program doesn't have the legal authority to pay full benefits, even if Congress appropriates those benefits. The appropriation itself would not be enough in this instance. Congress would have to make it explicit that the appropriation supersedes the rule that you can't pay when the trust fund is drawn down to zero. Okay, please go on.
2. Financial ability to pay. As Alan Greenspan explained under oath many years ago, the federal government cannot, quote, run out of money. One does not have to embrace modern monetary theory, MMT, to acknowledge that Congress has the financial ability to, quote, create as much money as it wants and pay it to someone, as Greenspan put it.
Yes,
Social Security.
Greenspan put it, and I must add here, Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress that power. It's in the Constitution. Please go on.
Social Security is a federal program authorized to pay benefits to eligible individuals, retirees, their dependents, and the disabled, under the rules established by Congress. The reason there is so much anxiety about Social Security, quote, running out of money, is that the authority to pay benefits is constrained by statute. If Congress changed the law to give Social Security permission to pay full schedule benefits, regardless of any earmarked source of funding, then the threat of automatic cuts would disappear.
And the importance of that last statement is transcendent. If Congress changed the law to allow that, then the threat, in other words, you hear Social Security is running out of money, it's going to run out of money in 2035. That kind of prediction, that kind of statement would be made nonsense if Congress simply changed the law giving Social Security permission to pay full schedule benefits regardless of any earmarked source of funding. That's all that would need to be done. That law, a law like that, if Congress were willing, could be passed in 15 minutes. It's like one or two sentences is all it needs. Please go on.
3. Capacity to provide real resources. This is where the rubber meets the road. And this is what MMT economists emphasize. It is easy enough for a currency issuing government like the United States to meet financial obligations that are denominated in a sovereign unit of account. That's true whether we're talking about paying trillions of dollars in interest on government securities or trillions in the form of benefits to future retirees. In purely financial terms, all of it is affordable, in quotes. But what about in real terms? Greenspan understood this distinction quite well. How can you be sure? He asked, quote, the, that the real assets are created which those benefits are employed to purchase. In other words, what happens after the checks go out and retirees who are no longer helping to produce the economy's output want to book vacations, dine out, play golf, get medical treatment, and so on. With fewer workers and more retirees, the real challenge is this. Will the economy be productive enough in the years ahead to allow both groups to buy the things they want, or will everyone end up competing over a shrinking pool of real resources, thereby driving up prices?
And that is a central question.
Mm-hmm.
That is another central question. But the first central question is, will Congress repeal the idea that if the trust fund runs down to zero, people can't have their full benefits? That's central question number one. This is central question number two. Please go on.
Running out of money. If we were having an honest debate, we would acknowledge that Social Security can run out of statutory headroom to pay full schedule benefits, but the money can always be made available. Alas, we've become trapped in an internal tug-of-war over the program's quote solvency, not unlike two desperate souls fighting over rocks in Dante's fourth circle of hell. Everyone just accepts that the program is quote running out of money. So there's a never-ending battle over the best way to shore up the program's finances. It's not the debate I want to have, but it's the only one that gets any serious consideration. So it's worth understanding how the Social Security Administration determines how much runaway is left before the program, quote, runs out of money. It's actually a pretty big undertaking, and it requires the trustees of the SSA to make a wide array of economic and demographic assumptions in order to project how much money the program will take in and pay out in future years. Here's a projection from the chief actuary of the SSA, Stephen Goss.
Okay, so
Oh,
you see that when we have the projection, okay, that at first there are scheduled, okay, and payable benefits, okay, and then in 2035, okay, it cuts out and the benefits are scheduled, but they're no longer payable, or they're not actually fully payable, And in the chart, okay, in the chart right on the bottom, on the right-hand side, from 2024 to 2034, what's projected is it's 100% fully payable. 2035, it goes down to 83%, then it gradually goes down year by year until in 2088, the scheduled benefits are only payable by 73%. Now, we have to keep in mind, all this would change if that one small change that Stephanie specified were to happen. If Congress would say that the benefits must be paid regardless of any earmarked source of funds, okay, like the trust fund. Then, if we were looking at payable benefits as a percent of scheduled benefits, they would always be 100%. It would always be 100%. Why would it always be 100%? Because, as Greenspan said, the federal government can never run out of money to pay its obligations. So as long as Congress continued to appropriate money for Social Security, it would always be paid up to 100%. Now, you do have to have the congressional appropriations even now. It's not automatic, that you get the congressional appropriations. Social Security is odd in that the congressional appropriations are always made a year ahead. Okay, for that reason, when people do projections, they would always say that it was fully paid for as long as the earmarked element was no longer controlling. Okay, but it would require Congress to keep on making appropriations. Nothing happens in federal spending without Congress doing the appropriations, in spite of what Trump is trying to do now. Okay, please go on, Dee.
There's enough, quote, money to pay full scheduled benefits until 2035. After that, the combined OASDI trust fund, quote, parentheses she has, which doesn't actually exist, is depleted, and the program is only legally authorized to pay 83% of scheduled benefits. The, quote, good news is that this is a projected to happen in 13 months later than the trustees were forecasting in their previous year's report. If that seems like a pretty big, quote, miss, it's because it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen to things like inflation, unemployment, economic growth, worker productivity, fertility and mortality rates, immigration, etc. Relatively small changes in the underlying assumptions can have a big impact on the size and timing of projected shortfalls.
Yes, she's absolutely right, of course.
The shortfalls weren't supposed to happen. Back in 1983, following the prescriptions of the Greenspan Commission, changes were made that were supposed to prevent Social Security from, quote, running out of money over the next 75 plus years. Yet, here we are, in the fourth cycle of hell, wringing our hands over looming shortfalls and automatic benefit cuts. Why is that, as Stephen Goss put it? Why are we now facing OASDI trust fund reserve depletion in 2035, almost 30 years earlier than projected in the 1983 report, after enactment of the 1983 amendments? Well, it turns out that some things are easier to predict than others. As Goss explains, it's not that people are living longer than expected. In fact, quote, projected life expectancy at age 65 in the 1983 report was extremely accurate. It's also not because of an unexpected decline in birth rates, for, quote, this was also known and anticipated in 1983. The main issue was that was the Greenspan Commission did not see coming was Elon Musk, or more specifically, the quote, increasing concentration of earnings at the top of the distribution, as Goss explains.
Okay, so just to supplement that statement very briefly, what was not anticipated was the development of the oligarchy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have to contend with now. If we broke up the oligarchy, that might itself improve the projectability of the Social Security Trust Fund.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what if we took away all the billions and didn't allow any billionaires? We taxed every single dollar above $1 billion and said no billionaires anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, we could do that. That would end the oligarchy and probably change the Social Security Trust Fund projections. Though I don't think anybody has mentioned that as a possible cure for the trust fund running out in 2035. I may be the first one to have mentioned that.
I know, it's crazy, the whole thing.
Okay, so in the chart, it's characterized as the main issue the drop in the ratio of taxable earnings to all the OSDI covered earnings. Okay, declined since 1983 due to increasing concentration of earnings at the top of the distribution. Between 1983 and 2000, the average annual earnings for the top 6% of earners rose 62% more than the CPI, but only 17% more for the other 94% of earners. The ratio dropped to 82.5% by 2000 and has remained there except for cyclic effects. This drop was not anticipated in 1983. So that's the story. Please go on.
Okay. Quote, the reduced share of earnings subject to payroll tax explains most of the increase in cost as percent of payroll compared to the 1983 projection. In other words, rising inequality is the main reason the Social Security appears to be in financial trouble. Okay, the bottom line. The bottom line is that if you want to engage productivity in the debate over Social Security, you need to understand the difference between legal authority to pay, financial ability to pay, and real resources capacity. If you simply want to understand why pretty much everyone believes the program is, quote, running out of money, you need to understand how the trustees formulate their projections. And if you want to understand why the trustees continue to project shortfalls when the whole quote problem was supposedly resolved back in 1983, you need to understand the one big thing the Greenspan Commission didn't see coming, the rise of Elon Musk.
Right. Or as I would more generally put it, the rise of the oligarchs,
Exactly.
the oligarchy problem. That's what we have now. And while we're on the subject of Elon Musk, well, before we go into this, I suppose we should look at uh, some further comments here. Okay. The Earl of Laurel says, hi, Sherry. Sherry says, hi, Earl. Sherry then says, the conversation Greenspan should have had was how to keep productivity high and maintain the return in productivity to the people. I think the productivity has been kept high, actually, and may have gotten higher in certain areas. The problem is maintaining the return in productivity to the people. That's where things have gone wrong. Actually, I think that famous graph dating from the 1970s shows there's a gap between rising productivity and the return in productivity to the people. And so that's what happened. We have not ensured by undercutting unions uh, and by allowing all the tax breaks for rich people. We have ensured the growth of oligarchy and the decline of democracy in our country. And we did it. We didn't care enough about it. And we let the very rich people BS us about the importance of regulating them and restricting their ability to acquire wealth. It was a terrible mistake. And we may have lost our democracy irretrievably because of it. But let us go on to the next question, because what is Elon Musk doing right now? One of the things he's doing is he's telling everybody that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. I had something to say about that a long time ago, and it's still up on Daily Costs. And this was a blog I wrote. It was originally on a number of websites, but a lot of those websites have gone away now, including my own website on this. But it's still up at Daily Costs, and it was dated September 16, 2011. But Let's Get It Done is the nom de plume that I used on Daily Costs. So, Governor Rick Perry's, he was the former governor of Texas, loose talk about Social Security being a Ponzi scheme. In other words, Elon Musk is far from the first person to say that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, is generating a lot of contrary ink or electronic bits, as the case may be. Cullen Roach has provided an excellent analysis, accompanied by a great discussion, which begins this way. And first of all, let's get the definition of a Ponzi scheme right. According to the SEC, a Ponzi scheme is, quote, an investment fraud that involves the payment of purported returns to existing investors from funds contributed by new investors. In other words, it requires there are no real returns, only purported returns. And those purported returns are being paid out from funds contributed by new investors. Quite simply, a Ponzi scheme involves the promise of future payments that current returns do not justify, unquote. So, a Ponzi scheme is an investment opportunity whose promoters mislead prospective investors, or marks, quote unquote, whose investment organization makes payments to existing investors from funds paid into the investment pool by new investors, whose promoters promise future payments that current returns on investment do not justify. However, Social Security is neither an investment opportunity nor an investment. Quote, investments are private sector voluntary business transactions involving risk to the investor and offering the possibility of returns on one's investment, while Social Security is a public sector program requiring payments from members of a specified proportion of their income. In return, they become participants in the program, they're members in the program, and are promised a particular level of benefits correlated loosely to the amount of their payments when they retire at a specified age of eligibility. The level of benefits they are due is cost of living adjusted throughout the period of their participation in the program. There is no economic risk involved in any of this, though there is political risk, since politicians may welsh on their promises and participants and commitments to participants. In addition, Social Security is different from a Ponzi scheme in that its, quote, promoters, unquote, don't intentionally mislead participants in the program. The details about Social Security are very transparent and are recorded in great detail on its website. Lies about the program and fraudulent claims about its benefits are wholly absent from its website. Next, Social Security payments are not made to recipients from new funds paid into the program. There is no such operational connection between payments and FICA collections. Payments go to retirees from the Treasury General account. FICA collections also end up in that account, but are in no way connected to SS payments. The Treasury issues bonds to the Social Security Administration in the amount of its FICA collection, and these bonds can be redeemed by the Social Security Administration when they are needed. By the way, the bonds are just an accounting record of what's been paid into the system, and the interest that is being paid on the supposed fund that is just an accounting record, as we have said. Lastly, unlike Ponzi schemes, Social Security promoters, quote unquote, do not, quote, promise future payments that current returns on investment do not justify, unquote. This is true, first, because there are no returns on investment, quote unquote, for Social Security, since it's not an investment in the first place. But second, even if one chooses to erroneously consider current Social Security benefits as, quote, returns on investment, unquote, it's very clear that the history of Social Security benefit payments since the inception of the program under FDR does, quote, does fully, quote, justify expectations that future payments will occur as projected by the Social Security Administration and the federal government. Since the program's inception, every participant has received the benefits due to them in consequence of their participation in the program. The history of this performance is now more than 70 years. Of course, it's now more than how many years it's been since. It's like not quite 14 years, okay, since I wrote this. So the 70 years has gone up to 83 years now. This is not the pattern of a Ponzi scheme, but one of a government entitlement program whose benefits are guaranteed by the full faith and credit of the monopoly currency issuer in the United States. Some will look at what I've said, brush aside the logic and the very important contextual framing, and will remark, as a commenter did in reply to Warren Mosler's fine analysis of why Social Security is not, quote, in Ponzi, unquote, the commenter said, quote, you are splitting hairs. What will happen when the money being paid into the SS system is depleted by the money being paid out to people who have previously paid in but are now recipients? The exact same thing had happened to participants of a Madoff-style Ponzi scheme. The system will tank. That's close enough, unquote. Comments like this assume Social Security is a fund that can be depleted, that the government requires USD, quote, in the fund, unquote, to make its payments, that the fund can only be augmented by FICA receipts. This assumption is wrong, but it leads to claims that Social Security must be, quote, reformed, unquote, by raising the salary cap for FICA payments or by raising the full benefits retirement age. Thus, Social Security is rendered unable to meet its obligations. This is a false problem, however, because it ignores the capability of the U.S. currency issuer, the government, to create the currency necessary to pay its obligations. It will. Professor Stephan of Kelton has put the real issue very well. Quote, funding Social Security is always and everywhere a political choice. The strongest evidence of this comes from the 2009 annual report of the trustees. In that report, they predict gloom and doom for Social Security because, quote, there is no provision in current law that would enable full payments of benefits once the trust funds are exhausted. In contrast, the supplementary medical insurance SMI trust funds are both projected to remain adequately financed into the indefinite future because current law automatically provides financing each year to meet next year's expected costs. It is that simple. The former is in trouble because the government is committed isn't committed to making the payments, and the latter gets a clean bill of health because the government will always make the payments. And then I said, okay, then unquote. And then I said, I think this really underlines how arbitrary the projections of financial doom from the Pearson crowd, the CBO, other government agencies, people like Rick Perry, Paul Ryan, and Mitt Romney, and now Elon Musk are. Apart from the silly and unreliable Social Security projections as far out as 25 to 65 years from now, the predictions of doom are really based on provisions in law that Congress can change at any time in an afternoon, which means that just the fake national debt crisis, which means that just like the fake national debt crisis, the fake Social Security solvency crisis is Congress's fault. But this brings us to an even more central issue. Assuming for the sake of argument that SS is a Ponzi scheme, then who are the quote Ponzi schemers? The managers who want to structure things so that the promised returns are eventually not paid to, quote, the marks, unquote, the retirees in the program, and who also want to use bonds issued to the program to enrich private sector managers rather than the retirees. I think the answer to that last question is plain. The very people who are questioning the sustainability of Social Security and other entitlements, and in particular Rick Perry, Mitt Romney, and now I'll add Elon Musk and the deficit hawks who are making claims of insolvency, are the people proposing, quote, reforms, unquote, that will break Social Security's promise to retirees and future retirees while failing to ensure that Social Security can always make its payments and can never be, quote, in Ponzi, unquote. They are the managers who are scheming to put Social Security, quote, in Ponzi, unquote, so that they can enrich their campaign contributors and the financial elites and deliver the financial outcomes to those elites that they think they are entitled to. These elites complain that working people and regular Americans aren't entitled to social safety net type of benefits. And they speak scornfully about the right of the rest of us to a decent life free from want and fear, which, by the way, is what FDR was always trying to provide, but never got a chance to complete his work. But it is they whose entitlements to get richer at any cost to the rest of us need to be denied and rejected. They are not entitled to sacrifice the rest of us on the altar of their greed, and we must not allow them to swindle us out of Social Security and other safety net benefits. Let us now join the battle. It is the second New Deal or serfdom for us. Let us fight the good fight and put the plutocrats and the Ponzi schemers, including Elon Musk, in their place. Let us take our democracy back and this time see to it that we never come close to losing it again. I wrote that in 2011. I think it's even more relevant right now. Whew. Any comments, Dee?
I agree with you. It's very relevant now. I mean, just think all these years and we're still talking about this.
And we are still talking about them. Let's take a look at comments. Any comments on that? Earl of Laurel says, didn't Greenspan oversee deregulation? Yes, yes. The author lets him off the hook. Yes, yes. He did. He did oversee deregulation, and he did materially contribute to the formation of the oligarchy through his later term as the chairperson of the Federal Reserve. He supported the formation, of oligarchy. He was part of the process and an important part of the process. Sherry says, yes, he did. And Sherry says, and we stopped enforcing antitrust, which enabled oligarchs, along with numerous other things. Yes, absolutely, Sherry. Absolutely right. So, folks, we come to the final article originally scheduled for tonight, though I might have a little bit of a very short bonus at the end. And the next piece is called The Case for a Shadow Cabinet. I think it's a very interesting proposal by Kenny Stansel, which appeared in the American Prospect. Kenny Stansel is normally a writer for Common Dreams, I believe, unless he has recently shifted over to the American Prospect. But regardless of that, he wrote this piece for the American Prospect.
Okay.
Uh, okay, the ball's in your court.
Yes,
Let me
I
get
know.
this
I know.
straight
Giving
up.
you a hard time. Okay. The case for a shadow cabinet. High energy progressives can provide a compelling daily account of everything going wrong and coordinate opposition to the Trump Musk nightmare.
There's Elizabeth Warren. Hands off the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Board, practically already destroyed by Trump and Musk.
Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts, speaks during a protest in support of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, February 10th, 2025, at the CFPB headquarters in Washington. The Revolving Door Project, a Prospect partner, scrutinizes the executive branch and presidential power and has followed them at it has the revolvingdoorproject.org. During his March 4th address to Congress, President Donald Trump defended the first 6 weeks of his already disastrous second stint in the White House, the way he defends all of his indefensible actions by bullshitting into a mic. Exactly it. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, in turn tapped Senator Eliza Slotkin, Democrat of Michigan?
Yeah, Democrat of Michigan, okay, and she's Alyssa,
Alyssa, okay.
right, as opposed to Eliza.
Okay. To deliver the Democratic Party's rebuttal, a troubling continuation of the ostensible opposition party's, quote, opposition to Trump 2.0. Slotkin, an ex-CIA agent who served as a national security advisor in the Bush-Cheney administration, a precursor to Trump's bloodthirsty anti-intellectual and authoritarian reign, holds the distinction of being the first Democrat endorsed by Dick Cheney's daughter, former Rep. Liz Cheney, even though the elder Cheney's 2024 endorsement of Kamala Harris hurt her chances of defeating Trump in November. Schumer remains committed to his ill-fated strategy of courting, quote, moderate Republican voters in wealthy suburbs, rather than focusing on the Democratic base, including disaffected working-class voters who have been leaving the party in droves. Slotkin's support for some of Trump's cabinet nominees and for the GOP's Laken-Riley Act, which eliminates due process for immigrants accused of crimes, gives her the bipartisan credentials fetishized by the likes of Schumer. And those same right-wing votes make her ill-suited to combat Trumpism at a time when we need a full-throated defense of public institutions that are under attack. Slotkin paid lip service to the need for a more efficient government, in quotes, going so far as to praise Ronald Reagan, a key figure in the neoliberal counter-revolution against the New Deal. If Schumer Trump-esque appeals to the good old days, in quotes, of bipartisan committee are designed to fail. What's the way forward for Democrats? Contra James Carville, Democratic officials inside and outside of Congress ought to be taking action simultaneously on three overlapping planes: ideological, rhetorical, and practical. This activity, ideally coordinated by a quote shadow cabinet of progressive counterparts to Trump's ghoulish cabinet members, should convey to the electorate that Democrats, not Republicans, care about working people and are going to improve their lives if given the chance in coming years. Well, Democrats have to start walking the walk.
Yeah, they have to start talking the talk and walking the walk. I
Yes,
mean, they're not even talking the talk right now.
right.
I mean, Slotkin's answer to Trump was ridiculous. It was ridiculously tame. The only good answer to Trump on that night was Bernie Sanders.
Ideological work. Ideologically, Democrats need to frame themselves as the anti-billionaire party. This shouldn't be hard to do because Elon Musk is this personification of billionaire avarice. Democrats need to foster and harness growing public disgust at how Musk, his Department of Government Efficiency, Deutsche Austerity Squad, and members of Trump's billionaire cabinet are disseminating the public good to benefit themselves and a tiny minority of super wealthy elites. Musk, a bona fide eugenicist with unprecedented access to government data, has anointed himself the sole arbiter of which public services are worthy of taxpayer support and who is an undeserving, quote, parasite. At home, Deutsch and the White House have put virtually every good thing the government does in their crosshairs, from public health and anti-poverty programs to bank regulation, tax law enforcement, weather forecasting, and public lands management. In the world's poorest countries, the richest man in history is literally, quote, snatching nutrient paste out of the mouths of starving babies, as the Prospect's Ryan Cooper put it. Before Musk became a ubiquitous left-wing, critics of billionaire power may have seemed abstract. Now that Musk has purchased the US government and is trying to annihilate people and projects he deems inferior, the essential danger of allowing a handful of individuals to accumulate economic and political power without restraint should be obvious to everyone.
I think that point is very, very important. Okay, I think that uh, while Jeff Bezos, okay, and Zuckerberg, some of the others have seemed to be very dangerous, okay, and have also personified the growth of the oligarchy system. The activity of Musk and his coming front and center and his obviousness about it and the 250 million he gave to purchase his place in the Trump administration, that has made him the personification, okay, of oligarchy in a way that previous oligarchs really never reached. Okay, and that uh, when you look at someone like a Bill Gates, or a Warren Buffett, some of the things they did were fairly benign, and they gave the impression of doing charity work and of not doing really great harm to people, okay, and to the public. Things got a little more dangerous with Bezos, okay, and Zuckerberg. But Musk has just become that personality who personifies the evils, okay, of oligarchy. And I think that has done us a favor in some sense. It's done a favor for the opponents, okay, of oligarchy, because now we have a personification of it that is so obviously disgusting and evil that we really have a target to focus our attacks on. So I think that point is a very, very important one. So please go on.
Democrats must vocally oppose the current grisly manifestation of plutocracy if they want to convince voters that they care about small d democracy. Corporate and billionaire-friendly Democrats who complain should be made to answer which they fear more: downward redistribution or full-fledged fascism.
Because that is the choice. That is really the choice. And those Democrats who are doing things like supporting this new cryptocurrency bill are obviously supporting the transition to fascism.
Mhm.
And we have to make that point very, very clear.
Rhetorically, Democrats must relentlessly highlight how the Trump administration and Musk's Deutsche wrecking crew are inflicting material harm on ordinary people, all while failing to address the cost of living crisis that they said would be their biggest priority. There's no shortage of foretold catastrophes being created or enabled by the White House and Deutsche. Oh, you want me to read this?
Oh, yeah, there's a list.
Airplane crashes, the resurgence of measles and other previously eradicated diseases, the cruel abandonment of cancer patients, the capitulation to unrestricted poisoning of our food, water, and air, the current to a potential bird flu epidemic, or the surrender to a potential bird flu epidemic, the unleashing of predatory scam artists on vulnerable people, the escalation of anti-union policies, and the intensification of planet heating pollution, which exacerbates extreme weather disasters and increases the odds of an insurance-triggered mortgage crisis.
So that's an interesting list, okay, and a very important list, and it's what's going on right now.
Exactly. Rather than letting Trump and Musk set the terms of public debate, for instance, ludicrousy, I can't get the word out, ludicrousy, and offensively calling the January 29th plane crash in Washington, D.C. a, quote, DEI crash. Democrats need to go on offense. While the investigation into the aviation disaster is ongoing, there's no reason why Democrats can't warn people about the escalating risk of, quote, Deutsche crashes brought about by the Trump-Musk assault on federal workers. What's happening in the aviation sphere What's happening in the aviation sphere reveals the quote logic of Musk's smash and grab operation. 2 days after Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy fired hundreds of federal aviation administrative workers, including those who maintained air traffic control infrastructure, he announced that he was inviting private sector consultants to help, quote, deliver a new, world-class air traffic control system that will be the envy of the world. And who do you suppose was first on the list of invitees? Of course, it was none other than SpaceX, one of Musk's companies. You break it, you get it. Meanwhile, food and housing are getting more expensive as the Trump administration ignores corporate consolidation, launches ill-conceived trade wars, terrorizes and deports immigrant workers, and inflames the fossil fuel-driven climate emergency. This sort of brutal class war not only jeopardizes the general welfare, but could also culminate in an economic crash. Will culminate in an economic crash. As Asita Nawanu pointed out recently, Musk's overarching innovation is that he has, through Deutsche, deregulated and privatized the work of deregulation and privatization. For Democrats to credibly criticize Trump and Musk's war on the public good, they can't favor a return to the status quo anti of government-led deregulation and privatization over today's unelected billionaire-led versions. They need to oppose any further enclosure of the commons, advocating for the restoration of New Deal institutions that have been sacrificed at the altar of financialization, and for the creation of new ones to expand the public domain and reduce market dependence. Practical work. Practically, Democratic officials need to inconvenience everyone involved in advancing Trump's objectives, including the rogue Musk. Democratic attorneys generals have slowed Trump-Musk assault via lawsuits. We need to see the same energy from congressional Democrats, who have so far failed to meet the moment. Indivisible has explained how House Democrats and Senate Democrats can, quote, delay and defy Trump's agenda. Democrats may not control either chamber, but contrary to House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries' claims, they do have the multiple points of leverage to disempower Musk and protect crucial programs. The message from congressional Democrats should be as follows. Either Trump and Musk follow existing laws, or we stop participating in the development of new laws. That means Democrats should be a, quote, no on everything until Deutsch stops sabotaging the government and starts to follow the law. Congressional Democrats can also spotlight abuses and ask the Government Accountability Office to conduct investigations at every turn, as my colleague K.G. Boyle wrote recently. The important follow-up steps is to use those requests to garner headlines and media appearances to amplify their message. The same goes for formal hearings, where congressional Democrats can invite expert witnesses, such as fired former government officials, to explain the negative impacts of Deutsche's rampage, as well as informal hearings like the one last week by Senator Elizabeth Warren with former Consumer Financial Protection Bureau officials. Finally, Democrats can also take long shots, such as trying to impeach Trump personnel like Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who has supported and evidently lied about Musk's infiltration of the federal payment system. While unlikely to be successful, such a move would raise the issue's salience and force Republicans to defend it. A shadow cabinet to coordinate opposition to the Trump-Musk barrage. The three planes of action outlined above are intertwined and apart from congressional oversight. None are limited to Democrats on Capitol Hill. There's plenty for state and local Democrats, governors, AGs, legislators, mayors, and other officials, as well as prominent party members to do. Moving forward, Democrats could take inspiration from parliamentary systems and set up a, quote, shadow cabinet full of energetic progressives who ruthlessly criticize every bad move made by their official Trump counterparts. Of course, to emulate as a model, there needs to be a quote shadow prime minister who organizes these efforts. If one thing is clear, it is that neither Schumer nor Jeffries seem interested in providing that leadership. By contrast, Senator Bernie Sanders is already off to a good start with his anti-oligarchy tour. At stops around the country, he's explaining to working people in districts that flipped from Biden to Trump how the Republican president and Musk are making their lives worse. Though she was denied a leadership position on the House Oversight Committee by the Democratic Party's corporate-friendly old guard, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has also been a frequent and vocal critic of Trump, Musk, and Deutsch. Sanders,
Sorry. Oh, I scrolled in the wrong way.
let me see, though she was denied a leadership position on the House Oversight Committee by the Democratic Party's corporate-friendly old guard, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been a frequent and vocal critic of Trump, Musk, and Deutsch. Sanders, Ocasio-Cortez, Progressive Caucus Chair Greg Casar, or another like-minded lawmaker would make a fine, quote, shadow prime minister. So too would former Senator Sherrod Brown, who was barely ousted from the Senate by a deluge of corporate money, or Flight Attendant Union President Sarah Nelson. Imagine a shadow Treasury Secretary explaining the tangible downside of Besant's pro-billionaire actions, a shadow Interior Secretary condemning Doug Burgum's public lands giveaways, a shadow Labor Secretary denouncing Lori Chavez Demers' attacks on worker protection, a shadow Transportation Secretary underscoring how Musk stands to benefit from the privatization of air traffic control infrastructure, a shadow Health and Human Services Secretary defending public health from RFK Jr.'s ill-informed blitz, a shadow Housing and Urban Development Secretary slamming Scott Turner's attempts to hurt low-income tenants, a shadow Environmental Protection Agency's administrator ripping Lee Zeldin's accommodation of polluting corporations, and a shadow U.S. Trade Representative explaining how Trump policy is undermining a nascent manufacturing renaissance. Now, picture, you're skipping. I saw that one little paragraph.
Sorry. Thought you were done.
Oh, okay. Down a little bit more. Now, picture all of that happening during a daily press conference held on Capitol Hill or at televised town halls across the United States. At each one, shadow secretaries are flanked by displaced government workers who describe how they used to protect the public before Musk's coup made it impossible to do so, and what they would do if given sufficient resources. That kind of past, present, and future-oriented storytelling and organizing is necessary to defeat the fascist threat. If Democrats think that sucking up to big tech executives and promoting a purportedly centrist agenda, devoid of economic populism, is the key to go, we are doomed. Trump's regressive policies, including the incoherent tariffs and Musk's evisceration of the government functions that enable broad economic prosperity, have already made a recession more likely. When that happens, Trump and his co-conspirators must be made as infamous as FDR made Herbert Hoover. A shadow cabinet can do that.
Okay, so what did you think of the idea of a shadow cabinet?
I think it's an excellent idea.
But how would we implement it?
Well, they talked about, I mean,
Okay,
they talked
well,
a bit about it, how to start it, but yeah, like you said, implementing, that's another thing.
uh, okay, I want to think about that for a little while. Okay, first of all, uh, okay, the Democratic uh, National Committee is still generally controlled by the consulting class.
Hmm.
They seem to have no desire to form a shadow cabinet. Uh, in terms of leading an effort like that, the person who's out there alone right now, and he hasn't said that he's after a shadow cabinet, of course, is Bernie Sanders. He's on the oligarchy tour right now. Uh, he has a problem of age when it comes to being the leader of any shadow cabinet. Okay, because in our system, of course, we don't have a prime minister, we have a president. In such a with a shadow cabinet, that shadow cabinet would have to be uh, uh, headed by a shadow presidential candidate. People would have to come together and would have to decide on a shadow presidential candidate they're all going to support. Okay, the Democratic Party might try to do that, but if they try to do that, their shadow president, their choice for shadow president, is probably going to be Kamala Harris or somebody equally useless, such as Alyssa Slotkin or somebody like that. People on the progressive side of the Democratic Party and people transcending the Democratic Party have to come together, I think, right now and select a shadow presidential candidate. And then they have to select the members of the shadow cabinet. If we agree that the person who has to do that, and I don't know if we can agree on this, can we agree that someone who steps into that role should be a member of Congress now? I don't know. I mean, generally, the presidential candidate, but doesn't have to be a member of Congress. It could be a governor. Uh, 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 these days, it could be a private citizen like Trump.
Hmm.
Uh, the question is, who is ready to step forward and who has the charisma to be the shadow president? One possibility, who has some governance experience and successful governance experience, is actually Tim Walz. He's still the governor, okay, of Minnesota. He seems to be getting ready to run for a third term. In that context, would he be able to function as a shadow president for the Democrats? Uh, Now, if we talk about possible third party candidates, are there any third party candidates that have any governance experience?
Hmm.
I think to a large extent, this has been the weakness of the third parties. Uh, they haven't come up with candidates that have governance experience, okay, in the present situation. What do you risk when you support someone who doesn't have governance experience? Well, you risk what happened with Trump. When he first came into the federal government, and what turns out was probably lucky for us considering his motivations and his intentions,
Hmm.
he didn't have any governance experience. Now he looks back on that and says it ruined his first term.
Yeah.
I think it probably protected us from what might have happened in his first term if he had governance experience. Okay, but the point is that just as that lack would sometimes protect us, if we want to get anything done in the federal government to break the system we have now, we probably have to have somebody with governance experience to head things up, and that person has to have some charisma. I personally like Jeff Merkley, okay, as a senator in terms of the policy agenda he seems to support. He's always been by the side of Bernie Sanders when it comes to policy. I wish Bernie himself was 10 years younger or preferably 20 years younger. But probably in contemporary politics, the closest thing to Bernie Sanders is probably Tim Walz. The closest thing in terms of anybody with governance experience. So maybe Tim Walz should be the president of the shadow cabinet. Then when we get into a lot of other people, yeah, I agree that AOC, even though she's accused of selling out quite frequently, she's still one of the most vocal and effective of the progressives in Congress. That's certainly true. Of course, the most effective of the progressives in spreading the message, okay, of progressivism currently is still Bernie. This oligarchy tour is attracting huge numbers of people, speeches across the country. There's nobody else we know who could do that in terms of, talking about the problem of this age. To look at some of the people he mentions here, Greg Casar is an interesting person, but also I think that Congressman Frost is another very interesting person who's outspoken. I think Jamie Raskin is another very interesting person who has a law background that is very, very strong as a constitutional lawyer. He's also a very effective speaker and is extremely bright. So he would be another person. As far as Sherrod Brown is concerned, I think Sherrod Brown lacks the kind of charisma we need for such a shadow candidate. He was fairly good as a senator from Ohio. He was probably one of the best of the Democratic senators, but that's not saying very much. Okay, with respect to Jeff Merkley, as I said, I like his policy platform, and I think he would probably be good for a shadow cabinet. But he has been very quiet in terms of expression, okay, of issues. He's not a powerful speaker. Okay, he is a pretty good speaker. Okay, now Sarah Nelson, okay, is mentioned here. Uh, she is, I think, a charismatic leader. Very, very forceful. Very attractive. Okay, of course. A very strong personality. She should certainly be in some kind of shadow cabinet. Somebody else who we should have in the shadow cabinet, an obvious choice, is someone like Sean Fain, the head of the UAW. He is also a powerful representative. Okay, so those are some of the people that I think
The woman that was
would help.
was in the service, and she talked very forcefully about politics.
Oh, are you speaking of Tulsi Gabbard?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that Tulsi Gabbard is currently wedded to the Republican Party and probably would not come into this situation. But in the foreign policy area, someone who should be in the shadow cabinet, I think the most outstanding representative of a drive for peace is probably Jeffrey Sachs.
Yes.
He is probably one of the most effective persons who should be there. When we get into the idea of a shadow treasury secretary, I have to immediately look to the MMTers
Mhm.
and think that the most effective person for a shadow treasury secretary would probably be Stephanie Kelton.
Definitely.
She's a very, very articulate person, of course, and very, very effective in explaining what she means. And she knows all the technical aspects of being Treasury Secretary from the MMT point of view. So I think she should be in the shadow cabinet. Uh, Also, we should have someone in the shadow cabinet who's not normally considered a member of the cabinet, and that would be the shadow cabinet's choice for running the Federal Reserve, because either Powell could be asked to resign, or if he doesn't want to resign, his term would be up. He was reappointed by Biden. I forget if it was in 2023 or 2024, and that's a 6-year term. But he might be done by 2028, even in the downside, if he doesn't want to resign. And then the shadow cabinet should have someone who would fit in as the chairperson, okay, of the Federal Reserve, and who would facilitate the kind of support we need from the Fed for getting to a Green New Deal. I know it's the fashion of the Republicans now to make fun of the Green New Deal. But this is equivalent to just, it's just equivalent to suicide. We need to get off fossil fuels. We need a Green New Deal to do it. We have to resurrect that. The shadow cabinet would have to resurrect that. And we need a Fed chair that would be willing to facilitate that. And my choice for that Fed chair would be Warren Mosler. He would probably like that kind of position very much. We know that he would facilitate a zero interest rate policy continuously and leave the handling of the economy to fiscal policy. And that, okay, is what we need. We also know that if it were necessary to make use of the platinum coin to do various things, he would also facilitate that kind of thing if we needed to do it for any reason. Okay, even though that person is not a cabinet member in the official sense, the chair of the National Economics Council is a very key person in directing economic policy. One of the best people to do that would be Randy Ray. He's one of the fathers of MMT. He understands it inside and out. He was the mentor of Stephanie Kelton. He would be a powerful director of the National Policy Council. For chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, another position which is very, very important, I think a great pick for that chair would be Pavlina Chernyeva. She is a wonderful advocate for the federal job guarantee, but she is also a macroeconomist of great ability and note, and so she would be a great person for that particular position. I can't think of a candidate for transportation chair, okay, at this point, but I would certainly keep but someone like a Buttigieg or a Buttigieg clone completely away from that particular position. We need someone who would do great things with respect to reinvigorating the railway system, okay, in this country, and creating, okay, a railway system that was equivalent to what the Chinese have done in China. We need someone, okay, who's an innovator, okay, when it comes to rail, and we need someone who could make rail competitive, okay, with air travel. That would be very good for the environment, if we did that. There are other positions we could talk about, but I think I've said enough, okay, for tonight. But anyway, it would be very hard to put together a shadow cabinet of this point. People would have to self-organize it on their own because it would never be supported by the party. But if this shadow cabinet was successful in critiquing Trump, if it was headed by someone who was a bona fide candidate for the presidency, such as Tim Walz, I think the Democratic Party would be forced to gravitate towards it over time. I think they would be almost compelled, okay, to select a shadow cabinet of their own, but I think the kind of shadow cabinet we're talking about here would eclipse their choices, because all they would do would make use of the same old consultants who don't want to do anything for people. The real alternative to Trump would emerge with this new shadow cabinet, the shadow cabinet, okay, of the progressives. So those are my ideas tonight about the shadow cabinet. I do think it's a good idea. It will be hard to implement. It would have to be self-organized. It would be a good idea for Tim Walz to begin the organization of that cabinet. But people would have to self-organize around Tim Walz. as the shadow PM, so called, as Kenny Stansel has put it. So those are my thoughts on that particular subject. Do you have anything to add, or any comments, or any critiques, Steve? Hello, Dee.
Hello?
Yeah, hi, Dee. Do you have any critiques or any other
Yes.
suggestions or additions?
Well, what I was saying was that it would be good if there could be more of a progressive lean to it, a shadow party. And that progressive, if that, would end up growing more, then when we talk about wanting a left-wing party, more of a left-wing party, there would be, energy towards that. I mean, it's a way to start.
Yes, I agree. It's a way to start. Don't you think the people that I suggested are, generally speaking, very left of center and progressive?
Mm. Well, I don't know about Tim Walz.
Well, Tim Walz, as the governor of Minnesota, got all kinds of legislation that is progressive passed in Minnesota as the government of Minnesota, with a very small majority there. Um, he was certainly the most outstanding governor in the country when it came to passing progressive bills.
Is he willing to, really lead? And like we talk about a shadow government, really lead with wanting growth of the progressive end.
I think so. I mean, I think he's, one of the, okay, as a governor, he was leading all the others
Hmm.
um, 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 as a progressive. As a congressperson, he was on the progressive side. As a vice presidential candidate, they drifted away from him because he was too progressive for them. They didn't want him front and center.
Okay.
They started going over to the Republicans, okay, because they were trying to get the Republican suburban vote, and they didn't want Waltz, okay, as front and center. But I can't think of many Democrats who are more progressive than he. Uh, I would suppose, in certain respects, I think Jamie Raskin is more progressive, but not necessarily on the economic front. We don't hear much from Jamie about the economics. Okay, even though his wife is a pretty good candidate uh, for chair of the Fed, or for Treasury Secretary for that matter. But we don't hear much from him about economics. Uh, of course, uh, the person who has been, people who've been most successful in pushing the Green New Deal, okay, are Ed Markey and Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. Okay, Alexandria, I think, in some ways has become much smarter, okay, as a politician. But I think she still has to grow some more. I don't think if she were to become the shadow PM, that she would have the pulling power that Tim Walz would have.
Right. Yeah, and wouldn't that be interesting too? Like Tim Walz really speaking out, people getting
Yes,
to know him. And that was just a shame that the DNC went in that direction. And
it
that's
was.
like we've said over and over again, that is the problem with the DNC.
That was the problem with the DNC. That's why we need a shadow cabinet that's outside of the DNC.
Yes.
Okay. And if we got Tim Walz to head up that shadow cabinet, if he was willing to do it, then that would certainly locate him on the very left wing of the party.
Yeah, it makes sense. I really didn't know too much about him.
Yeah, he was, as I said, he was by far the most successful lefty governor in the United States since 2018. So he has a long track record in that respect. He's now served for 2 terms. He's running for a third term, okay, in Minnesota. And this time, as the governor of Minnesota, if they get a larger majority in the legislature of Minnesota, they're going to pass a state single payer bill. And Tim Walz is going to sign it.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
So that really put him on the map.
That would really put him on the map. But there are lots of legislators who are there who are pushing it at this point, have been lobbying for it for some time. There's a great deal of legislative support for it.
Okay.
Um, person who could tell us a lot more about that is Lana Dell, because she is up to her neck in the lobbying in Minnesota for it. Okay, so anyway, okay, any other comments?
No, that was about it.
Okay, yeah, I guess we're all getting tired. It's about 12:08.
Yes.
But let's go over the last of the comments. Sherry Wise says, and we stopped enforcing antitrust, which enabled oligarchs along with numerous other things. Yes, Sherry, very correct. Sherry said, very good articles on this stream. Thank you, Sherry. And Sherry said, sorry, didn't paste it right the first time. Earl of Laurel says, Dems should definitely be offering a New Deal type plan. Being the party of not Trump is not enough. Well, the reason why it's not enough is, giving the way Trump is screwing up, it may be enough to take over the Congress enough again. It may even be enough to win in 2028 again, but it's not enough for the country. If we really want to get this country out of trouble, we do need to have a Green New Deal type of plan and the people to implement it. And I don't care whether they end up in the Democratic Party or they end up starting a third party. But if they end up in the Democratic Party, they have to totally reshape it. And it has to be FDR's party once again, the updated FDR party. If we don't have that, we won't have the cross-the-board support. We won't have the large majorities in Congress we need to get all the things through we have to get through. I mean, look, if you look at it from a realistic point of view, we have to end the billionaires.
Mm-hmm.
There should be no billionaires. That means no, the link didn't show up. That means that we have to replace 2/3 to 3/4 of the Congress. That means we have to replace all the Republicans and more than half of the Democrats. Earl Lura says, I don't think Bernie, he Russiagates after being Russiagated. Yes, I agree. That's why for the shadow cabinet, we need Jeffrey Sachs as the foreign policy person, as the candidate for Secretary of State. At Jerry Wise, I don't think you can link in the chat, unless you are a mod. Jerry Wise says, Earl agree. I thought you could at least put one link in the chat, but I may be mistaken about that.
Why are people not interested in what's going to happen with schools?
I think people are interested in that. I think that's part of the Green New Deal also. Certainly the Department of Education would be very strong under a Green New Deal plan.
Well, they're
And-
getting rid of teachers.
Well, the Green New Deal would stop that. Definitely stop that. Bernie's program was very strong on education. Bernie's platform was very strong, on education. I mean, Bernie's platform was a little weak on spending estimates. He was looking at 16 billion over 10 years. We need something in the range of 50 to 80 billion over 10 years for a Green New Deal. The Dems should also be raging about VA cuts too. I agree. They should be raging about everything, especially with Musk carrying on and whining about his cars. Earl says, I got to go to bed, guys. Thanks for the stream. And thanks for being the coolest people on YT Chat. Thank you, Earl.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sherry Wise says, good night, Earl. And Sherry Wise says, for a shadow cabinet, being from somewhere outside of D.C. is probably a plus. Okay. David Sachs, spelled Secks, would not be great. But Jeffrey Sachs, Sachs, the Columbia professor, would be great. He is the best when it comes to foreign policy for peace. Sherry Wise says, gotta go. Good night. Thank you for coming, Sherry. Thank you for your comments. I think we all have to go.
Yes. Thank you,
Maybe
everyone,
on
for
that
being
note,
here.
say good night. Are you going to have a show tomorrow, Dee?
Tomorrow's Friday. Will you be joining me?
Okay. If you have a show, I will be joining you.
Okay, so just let me know some things you would like to talk about.
Okay. I will throw in some things.
Good.
I'll be back on Saturday at 9 p.m. I don't know yet what it would be. I'm inclined to do an international relations show, but there's still a lot to talk about on the domestic front. So,
Yes, there is.
I may be impelled to do that. So we'll have to see. I'm not sure what I'll talk about on Saturday. I know I have so many things to talk about, though. It's not funny.
I know it's unbelievable times we're living in.
Unbelievable times we're living in. Okay, thank you all for coming, and everybody, good night, and thank you, Dee.
Yes, good night, everyone, and good night, Bonnie.
Good night.
Okay, good
And
night, folks.
good night, everyone.
Okay, good night, Dee.
Who's the